Hello and welcome to this episode of Maverrik Podcast. I'm here today with Isaac Mashman. How are you doing today?
Luke, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic. And today we're going to be discussing about what you've been up to over the past couple of years and about personal branding, because I feel like you've got a lot to say about the topic, as you've kind of, I wouldn't say you've written a book on it, but you've written a manifesto on it.
Yeah, I mean, man, there's so many different things that we could talk about and so many different areas of conversation. So I'm going to let you direct that so I don't go 25 different ways.
Well, we'll see where we head at the end of it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
First of all, let's just get into what have you been up to for the past 2 years? I ask this to everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, the past couple of years I've been building my business. I know that we've been in a pandemic for 2 years, but my business was actually birthed April of 2020. Prior to that, I was going through different things and different ideas, and I never had an LLC, never had anything. And for whatever reason, it was like this mental shift in me. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't I get the LLC? Let me get the paperwork. Let me be official. Let me go ahead and treat this like something that I'm building, like as $1 million business. And so I got the LLC paperwork. And April 2020, Mashman Ventures was born, and I've been building that, which is a public relations firm. So it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's really cool. So in terms of approaching the ventures and then yourself, obviously Mashman Ventures is then powered by you and your image and your brand. Mm-hmm. In your day-to-day, how do you approach like social media for that and yourself?
Yeah, a lot of content creation. And obviously, the name of the business is named after me. I'm never anticipating on selling the business or anything, but, creating content is definitely a lifestyle that you have to get into. And that's one of the biggest issues that a lot of my clients have. They're like, well, how do I have the time? Maybe they're busy doing speaking, or they're working with clients, or they're working their 9 to 5. It's like, how do I find the time? And the fact of the matter is, you could be driving to work at a red light recording a video. You could be in the parking lot recording a video, behind your desk recording a video. And video is one aspect. There's so many different forms of content, but it's truly something that I've had to embrace because I used to never want to be behind the camera, but the ROI is too great to not be putting myself out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid to put their face to camera because you can't Photoshop a video unless you've got really great skills or a really good time to do that, and you want to just go out there and put something out there. And yeah, just jumping on like even on a podcast like this today, or just like a quick thing when you're walking around. Are you a fan of spontaneous content then? When you approach content creation, you just go out there and say, okay, I've got something on my head, I want to just get it out there? Or do you love to just have a whole content schedule for like a month? What's your go-to?
Yeah. Well, I actually am very chaotic when it comes to my content. It might not seem like it, but I don't have a content scheduled out for the next month. Maybe I'm working towards that, but it hasn't been a priority. But I do like the spontaneous nature. And what I've noticed is whenever you have that idea that comes across your mind, maybe you're going through something and all of a sudden you think to yourself, this would be a great idea for a piece of content. Then right then and there, you either take out your notepad and you write it down. And, I have like a list in my phone with nearly 100 ideas of content that I just spent time developing. And that's another thing. If you can't come up with ideas for content, take 30 minutes, literally lock yourself in a room, cut out all distractions, close the blinds, and sit down with a pen and paper or your phone on your notepad and D&D and just write out a list of content ideas. But I love the spontaneous nature, or whenever I'm traveling, I especially love to create content then, because I'm able to give glimpses outside of just the same office background where, I'm making calls and producing content every day. And it's good because that's how people connect with you.
Yeah, we've got a studio here, and we found loads of different ways to change up the scenery. We've got the backdrop before. This is the new blue you've seen for this podcast, and it is having to keep things fresh and new ideas, which people can struggle with, because you have a main message, don't you? When it comes to building a business, you have this message you want to get out there. It's a promise to the world and promise to your clients that this is what I will get you at the end of your results, and you just find new ways in order to say that, and then new ways to provide value for them to say, okay, this is how I do it. This is how I do it for everyone. This is how you can do it to help yourself, and then it'll be good to just have a shout out to say thank you at the end of it. That's kind of what you're in it for, really. Whenever it comes to producing content, it's not just I will produce this so everyone will share it and everyone will know me. It's I will produce this, it will be useful, and then people will then share and do the rest, and just spread out the love of creating content, getting someone out there, and getting someone over the fear of creating content, because a lot of people struggle to create the right content, or try and struggle to make sure that their content's always perfect. And that's an issue that people face a lot of the time. It's quality versus quantity. Where do you stand on that sort of argument?
Well, I say that quantity is extremely important, but so is quality. And a lot of times people think that they have to hire a video team or they have to have somebody edit the video. And that's simply not the case, especially when you're starting out. That does not mean you should put out crap, though. That does not mean that what you're putting out is just like, it's rough, it's blurry. So like some do's and don'ts of, I know the conversation's been steered a lot towards video just because videos like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Reels, like literally it is the number one thing that's triggering algorithms. And I've seen people grow their channel. I mean, I myself quadrupled because a couple of YouTube Shorts took off. Nobody's talking about YouTube Shorts. Everybody's talking about TikTok and Instagram. But when it comes to creating a video, yeah, make sure that it's not blurry. Make sure it has, like, if you're doing a speaking message or something like that, have some professional courtesy and respect for what you got going on. But at the same time, a lot of my best performing videos have been the ones that have taken 20 seconds, 1 or 2 takes, and I'm literally just looking into the camera and I edit the beginning and the end so you don't hear my iPhone camera click. That's it. But from there, it's like those have performed the best because a piece of content can do 3 things. It can educate, it can entertain, or it can inspire and motivate somebody. I put those 2 in the same category. And it's like, if you can do all those 3 things with 1 piece of content, you're doing really damn good.
Yeah, it's interesting when you've got, you spend hours on a piece, but then you spend about a quick 5 minutes and the turnaround can be completely different depending on what you say. Because you can have some really good messages. Okay, I'm just going to quickly say this because it's on my head and I think it's really important. And then it can take off. Or you could stay there for hours, go through all your analytics, see what people are resonating with, and then you've written down a full script and you put it out there, and about 4 people go, "Oh, that was cool, dude." And that would be it. But it's keeping motivated to do that because when you do get those moments where it's like, okay, that one didn't quite hit, I'm going to try again. It's not taking it personally, and it's just powering through and motivating yourself each day to put something out there because consistency is a thing that people get. Yeah, it's hard to do. Yeah, I mean, even with like it's been like a day or 2 where if I'm posting on LinkedIn or if I'm trying to like post and keep up with posting, it's like, okay, well, I've got a plan. I know what I post. I know what I talk about, but I want to make it different this time. So what can I do to make it different? Do you usually just turn off all the lights and just it's not like kind of meditation, but do you sort of block out everything when you do your new ideas, or do you try and search for influencers?
I mean, influencers are definitely important. One of the chapters in my book, or one of the subtitles rather, is reverse engineering, because that's what I did early on. I reverse engineered every single successful person. And that's how I developed the understanding of what works and what doesn't. And so somebody could go and see, well, what podcast distribution networks could I go on and get my podcast on? They could reverse engineer the Maverrik podcast and go through all of these different things and be like, hey, wow, I can get on here. I didn't know that this one existed. And that's one of the things that I did, just doing research. And so when it comes to like my best ideas, honestly, they're in the shower and they're at night. I literally am one of those kind of guys where I will like shower in the dark and literally just have my best ideas. As depressing and emo as that might sound, thinking I'm crying in there contemplating my life, I can come up with ideas or reflect over a call or reflect over something that could have been better. Or at night when everything is quiet. I'm not one of the early risers. I'm just going to get that out of the way. I'm not one of the guys who like can get up at 5 o'clock. I've done that and I don't like it. I would rather, and I'm more productive at night to where everybody's asleep. The cats are asleep. They're not bothering me. And I get to sit down and bang out some content or come up with some good ideas.
Yeah, I feel like the 6 a.m. risers and the gym goers at 5 a.m. who will tell you their schedule. I work 15-hour days and it's nonstop. People do have nonstop days, but we're not in an age anymore where people brag about it and it becomes like I want to live that lifestyle. We want real, authentic people who will tell us, sometimes you need to sit down and take a step or have a redirection. And I think people actually prefer someone who has failed first time or a few times and said, look, this is how I've done it wrong. This is how I'm doing it now. And it's better because that they've not just gone, oh, I just did this and it worked. And it's okay. I because a lot of people say, oh, I got lucky, or they won't tell you they got lucky and say, this is definitely the path I want you to take. And then coincidentally, I'm selling a course on this path. And you're like, okay, it doesn't seem like authentic, does it? But when you're providing value, always having that caveat at the end of, oh, by the way, I'm selling this or I'm doing this. It's a hard turnaround, but at the same time, you can't always do it. So in terms of like leveraging value versus, actually promoting and selling, Do you have a structure for that in your own business?
Well, it's funny because a lot of the business that comes in through Mashman Ventures is referral based. Just closed a great client the other day. That was a great referral, literally 3 days. And it's like, bam, good client work. However, when it comes to creating content and doing offers, it's taken me literally 5 years since I got started with all this to just going through different offers and stuff to finally consider launching a program. And we're calling it Training by Mashman Ventures. We're not calling it, some course or $1 million mastermind kind of thing. And no disrespect to some of the people who are doing masterminds, but that's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I had a roster of nearly 100 testimonials, video and written, before I even considered doing a course or a program, because with today's day and age, you hinted at it, everybody does a program, everybody does a course, and it's like they have nothing to back that up. And even then, it's like if I'm putting something out, I want to make sure that it looks great. I want to make sure that it's top tier. I'm not just going to say, join my group for 20K, and it's like, cool, you get one meeting with me a year, and even as I get out of reach, and as your business scales, you get farther and farther out of reach. We were talking about Dean, and you're like, it's lucky if we get one meeting with Dean, because he's busy building the business and having the face, being the face of the business and putting out content. There's so many different hats and facets of a business owner. And so when it comes to, doing something like that, you have to be strategic and make sure that people have a level of respect and authority for you. Because if that doesn't exist and they don't view you as that authority, you're going to spend all this time launching something and nobody's going to buy it because they don't think of you different. And that's part of where personal branding comes in, kind of positioning yourself as that public figure, because all of these other guys are. So how are you going to ever break through the noise with them? And I'm not saying become a narcissist and super ego-centered, but at the same point, you have to realize that you want the attention. You are seeking the attention. And with that, the perception around you and the noise around you starts to change and evolve.
You need to elevate yourself above the majority of people who are doing the same thing as you. I mean, it's competition as competition is sake. But it's not a case of, I'm going to, start slandering anyone. I just want to pour it out there that, I know what I'm talking about. I've been it through before. And you build yourself a profile online using your personal brand that you've got experience, you've done the training, and then you deliver a training, you're with someone and you can actually provide results for them, which is in itself, you don't want to call yourself, an expert, but you are leveraging yourself as the expert that people go to. A go-to expert, everyone says, okay, I don't want to work with just anyone. I want to work with this person because I've seen them online, I've seen what they do, and I've seen that they actually provide results for clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you should never call yourself an expert. And I've done it on very rare occasions. When I was super young, starting with all this, I was like, yeah, I'm an expert. And then looking back, I'm like, Isaac, but that's normal. You go through those iterations and those evolutions as you grow and as you scale. However, the one interesting thing I've noticed is for not calling myself an expert, other people have started to call me the expert. And so now you have that third party validation, which is essential. That's why getting into the press and the media. And really quick, I'm going to say this for everybody listening. If somebody approaches you trying to get you in Yahoo Finance or Forbes or Entrepreneur or get the verified blue check, run the opposite way. Because that's something I've seen a lot of lately. And I've seen a lot of people, and this has been going on. It's like, pay me $5,000, we'll get you in Forbes. And they don't actually tell you that that goes against their terms of use, and that can actually hurt your reputation. And so build your personal brand to where the press comes to you, or to where you could get into the press without having to pay your way in, because that's what legitimate media does.
Fantastic. So I'm going to pivot into actually talking about your own podcast now. Your podcast is called Chase the Vision.
Yep.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to ask a question because I wanted to ask it. What is the vision?
That's the thing. It's always expanding. It's evolving. And so for me, it's, the vision ties in with what I would consider maybe my purpose, and that's to live up to my potential. And so that's always going to be going and hitting a new mark. And it's funny that you asked me about that, because by the time this comes out, the podcast is going to have ended. And then we're going to be leading into another podcast. I don't quite know the name of the podcast yet, but again, an evolution. It's like I've done 100 episodes of that. Like, let me go ahead and move into something different, more mature, more, a different level.
Yeah. Have you got any ideas of what that's going to be about?
Yeah, it's still going to be a similar premise, but less on I feel like with Chase the Vision, I was recently at the store the other day, and somebody's like, well, what's your podcast name? And I told him, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable even talking about it anymore. Because I feel like it even treads that line of cliche. And so the new podcast is going to still be talking about personal development and education and business, but less of trying to convince you to listen to it, and more of you're naturally going to get it. And that's something that a lot of these great podcasts have. Like, I'm not exactly sure what's really hot in the UK right now, but I imagine it's probably similar to a degree with what's going on in America, with certain shows dominating the top. But they all just naturally give you value and naturally talk about business or naturally talk about self-improvement without having to convince you that they're talking about it. And so that's something that the new show is going to have, and a little bit more about my life and more about my experiences, more personable and a little bit more entertaining, to be frank. I'm sick of the whole like content. It just has to be value kind of thing. It's like people also want to be entertained and connect with you.
Yeah, you can have content which is a little bit lengthy, a little bit more sit down, and a little bit more like maybe intimate, and then a little bit back and forth, because we put out this podcast and we don't regularly chop it. It's not moments where I'm sat here and then also I'm sat here all of a sudden. We're not cutting about. Like, this isn't like any form of YouTube like sort of video. It's a podcast. It's people talking and people chatting. So having that level of realism, I'd say, is important. And we try to get as much value out of our guests, because whenever we put out a call for podcast guests, unfortunately, we don't actually talk to everyone that goes through the door. But there's people in where I go, okay, I really want to talk to this person because I've seen what they've done online. And I just want to ask them how their journey's going so far, what motivates them, and where we're going to go moving forward. And on that note, so I asked you about the first 2 years. What are you going to be doing in the next 2 years?
The next 2 years, scaling Mashman Ventures, buying property. Because Mashman Ventures is my vehicle, but I also have other companies that I'm going to be working on building as well. Mashman Investments and Properties. I incorporated that earlier, or both of those companies earlier this year. And so buying more land, which is nice, especially with the state of the economy currently in the United States. And I think worldwide, a similar thing is going on. There's a lot of tension right now. I want assets that, a lot of people are focused on the metaverse and NFTs and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I see somewhat value based off of the project, but I would rather own a physical asset that, I could go ahead and put a shovel in the dirt and say, like, this is my dirt, because that's you're never making more of that. And so definitely more investments, scaling Mashman Ventures, and also scaling my personal brand. I have a feeling that over the next couple of years, I'll probably do a second edition of my book, which I've never mentioned before to anybody outside of my very close circle, and just a few other things that are really going to kind of propel me forward credibility-wise in the space. And I feel the person, top 10 personal branding like experts to follow. It's like, I feel like that's very, very close, which is good.
So I've got a scoop there with the new book. So we're going to chase all the headlines with. When you approached your first book, what made you choose personal branding?
I went through just like I went through half a dozen business ideas. I went through half a dozen ideas, if not more, for my book. And I wanted to do something that, I tried to write an autobiography, and I'm like, I'm too young for this. Like, this isn't here yet. I'm not like, I can understand it. Like, I can position myself, but this isn't it. But something about personal branding, the moment that I realized that I started working with people for their personal brands, it just felt natural to me, because that was something that for me, I always was great at conversing. Like, for being, wanting to run away from the camera, I never had a problem talking to people. But I realized that personal branding is a space, and it's something that there's such a misconception that goes on right now. People think that they have to create a new personal brand every single time they pivot. That's not the case.
Or new personality.
You've had your personal brand from the moment you were born, even when you were in the womb and your mom's telling everybody, baby Luke's coming out, and it's funny. I can't get over how the background here, and I don't know if this is on video, has the blue, and it's like, I keep thinking about Luke Skywalker and the blue lightsaber, man. But I wanted to write it, and I wanted to talk about philosophies and not strategies that would work today and be gone tomorrow. I've picked up some books before, and it's like they talked about what worked on Facebook a couple years ago, and it just doesn't work. And I'm like, how does that stand the test of time? How is their shelf life there? And so I wanted to talk about something that was, I called it a manifesto, and I think about Thomas Paine, common sense over here in America. And I'm like, all of these great things were manifestos in a sense, and they're a declaration of beliefs. And so it's still technically a book, but it's more of a work by than anything.
Yeah, when you talk about tools in these books and these automations, it lasts probably about a year, doesn't it, before you have to reinvent them. Yeah. I wrote a book on LinkedIn tools, because when we were doing all of our LinkedIn training sessions, it's usually the basics that we start with. It's how do you structure a post for more views? How do you upload an image? What formats, types? It's stuff that people still need to know, because you otherwise just sat there thinking, oh, now I have to go for this. I usually just Google it. And thankfully, that's kind of what we started writing blogs about as well. We just wanted to answer questions, just get it out the way, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But after a while, new tools come out, new automations happen. What happens before doesn't work now. But I agree with you that if you talk about personal branding, if you talk about identity, and you talk about, people, just instead of portraying themselves on camera, just being themselves in a business sense and providing the value, that's how you get, that's how you get people to watch you, take notice of you, and you can build a relationship with people. Then you can actually, talk back and forth with people. You don't always have to be on camera doing podcasts. You could just be chatting with someone on a Zoom call. You could just be messaging someone on LinkedIn really quickly. You don't have to, know what their mother's maiden names. You don't have to say hi to every member of their family or bring them a cake every so often, but you do have to reach out and say, hey, I'm here. If you need anything, let me know. This is what I do. This is what I'm good at. And this is what I can do for you. That's all you need to do, really.
And it's also taking those relationships that you have offline, online, and this is something very few people do properly or at all. That, a lot of times, and I'm building my business primarily online. 98% of my clients come from online. I'd honestly say it's more like 99.9%. But truthfully, those face-to-face interactions that you have with your coffee, the barista, at Starbucks or whatever, that is somebody who can follow you. And that doesn't mean they might be able to work with you, but they might know somebody who can, or they might support you, or they might be able to buy your book, or they might be able to like your content and share the content. So it's like, I've had some of the best people that have been continuously supporting me that I was friends with in high school. And, I've maintained contact with, and I wasn't even friends with them back then. They didn't know I existed, but now they're like, hey, we went to the same school. So that's a level of rapport, and rapport is trust. And if you build trust and you get to know a little bit more about them, and you connect with them on something, that gives them all the more reason to continue supporting you. And that works both ways. And so I would encourage you to reach out to some of those old friends or old business partners or clients that you met face to face, you shook their hands, and actually get them to follow you online. And then from there, that's how word around town locally begins to spread too, because there are levels to this. You can become well-known locally, nationally, or internationally. And I would highly suggest everybody just skips the local part and goes straight to international, but it's naturally going to drip down to where, hey, now you're known nationally, now you're known locally. And that's how you can do events and do speaking events now that the world's starting to open up to a degree, and be able to actually go out and have trainings in person, do speaking engagements that you can actually take and film for your credibility and position online. You're doing all these things offline to help propel you forward online, which changes and shifts the perception people have of you whenever they're coming across your page and getting that first impression, or whenever they do research on you.
People talk, like you said, referrals earlier. If you've done a great job, people say, oh, this person did a great job. And you can take that offline and do it locally yourself, which is a really good point. I don't know if you would go to a coffee shop and say, hey, I am the expert at this personal branding. You write that on the side of my coffee cup, but you would do it in a way where it's just like, hey, I've met you, and in this format, I do this. You just talk about what you do really all the time. And it's just finding like new and interesting ways of doing that. Because I feel like, because of the whole, the pandemic, a lot of the time we're kind of not really frightened to talk to people, but everyone's kind of, especially in the UK, we're like, we'll just carry on, do our own thing. We've got our silos. It's hard to do like a face-to-face kind of scenario to pull people out of our own world, because everyone's doing their own thing all the time. Yeah. Like they wake up, they have their routines, and then they go home. And some people live really just secluded lives where they just want to, get in, do a job, and get out. But even then, they still need some help with maybe branding, or maybe, how to create content, pushing their name out there. Because it's not just the extroverts, it's also people who can, be introverts who can create content, which is really valuable for people. Even if it's just writing a small article, or just putting out a picture, because it can really be easier to do. Even if you don't want to jump in front of a camera, you can still provide some value in content. But yeah, that's kind of my take on the UK versus US relations and face to face. Thank you again, Isaac, for coming to the podcast and sharing your insights.
Luke, it's been an honor, man. I've loved it. It's been a lot of fun. Good conversation.
Thank you all for watching the Maverrik podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on wherever you get your podcasts from. It gets distributed everywhere. And we will see you next time for our next podcast.